Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mar, and I feel like I always start my videos on this side of my TBR cart that I just wanted to change it up a little bit and show you sort of the full TBR cart or half the TBR cart. I would say for this week's video, I thought we would do another fantasy type reading vlog because it is fantasy fall and I am getting back into my fantasy, a little bit of romantasy reading mood. And so that's what we are going to focus on first for these next couple of vlogs. As you can see, I have a ton of books on my TBR. This first top part of it is all the books that I have not read yet, and then the bottom part are actually books that I have read. I just don't have enough shelf space to put them on. I have a lot of, again, fantasy books, more so, I would say romantasy books on my TBR, and so for this video, I thought I would try to read as many as I can, because what I've also noticed is that a lot of the books on my TBR cart are books that are like 500 pages long, and I feel like for the most part, I have been reading a lot of books that are more so around like the 300, almost 400 page, whereas I haven't read a lot of 500 page books, and that also scares me. For example, Alchemized is 1,000 pages, and that really terrifies me. We are going to be doing more of a fantasy type of vlog. I would classify some of these books I'm probably going to read as romantasy as well, but I don't know what books I'm reading yet, honestly, for this vlog. The first one I do have on my current roster is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I did start reading this weekend. From when I'm filming this, it is currently Tuesday, and this past weekend was Thanksgiving weekend for us Canadians. So I spent actually quite a bit of my weekend in a different city. We went on a little road trip, and I ended up reading about 30% of this book. I am trying to get through this as not necessarily as quickly as I can, but at a pace in which I can, confidently read other books without it like this interfering with like my reading schedule. It did take me like 3 days to read 30% of this book, which is much longer than I normally need to read a book. And so I don't know how long it's going to take me to read Wild Reverence. For the most part, I really like this book so far from what I've read. I think Rebecca Ross has just such a ability to write a lot of like not necessarily whimsical like fantasy romance, but like her books just have this magic to them and have this very historical feeling, mystical feeling, I guess, while you read it. I will actually like explain what this plot is a bit later, but for the most part, this is what I've been reading. I guess I'll reveal the other kind of books that I read for this vlog a bit later, but for the most part, we are going to start with Wild Reverence. I forgot to mention, but I also ended up getting the audiobook for Wild Reverence, but it is due in like a day or so, and so I don't know how far I'm going to make it into the audiobook, but I also don't know if like the audiobook is what's slowing down my reading or not. Usually when I have an audiobook playing, it helps me, but for this one, I don't know if the audiobook is helping me or not, but like the audiobook is really good. It's just I think it is slowing me down a bit compared to like if I just read it on my own, because I am a pretty fast reader, but I like the audiobook so far, and I think the audiobook narrators are really bringing the world to life. And so, yeah, I'm going to continue reading this, and I'll let you know my thoughts a bit later. So I made it to about 62% of Wild Reverence, and I thought this would be a good time to update you guys my thoughts on this book so far, and just like what I think, and kind of like a very bad explanation on what this book is actually about. I am currently on now going on to Act 4 of this book. This book has been split up between 5 different acts, and so I just read the first 3, and I think this is also a really good like stopping point just to kind of reflect on the content that I've been reading so far. This is not going to be an eloquent review or synopsis of this book at all, but pretty much this book takes place from 2 point of views. The first one being the goddess of messages, or like she's the herald of messages, and she's able to travel between the underworld and like the skyward realm and all that, and the mortal realm. So that is Matilda. And then there is the point of view of this mortal man named Vincent, and pretty much this whole book is in a way a romance story between them, and these 2 individuals are connected to each other by the means of, fate and all of that. In this book, it just kind of tells a story of, how they're fated to be, and the sort of different situations that they get into. And from where I am in this book right now, there hasn't been necessarily a linear plot to it, in the sense of like you don't really know how this book is going to end. This divine and this mortal keep returning back to each other even when they get separated. And so the first few chapters you learn more about Matilda's life and a little bit less about Vincent. I would say Matilda is definitely the more drawn out character, I would say. Vincent, you learn more, you learn enough about him that the when he shows up in the book, you're not like, who is this man? It's like you have that understanding of his role in, possibly like where this book is going to go and all of that. But at the same time, it is definitely a much slower moving romance compared to Divine Rivals and all that. And speaking of Divine Rivals, this is a prequel book to it, and but do I think you need to read Divine Rivals in order to understand what's happening in this book? Not at all. I think you can read this before Divine Rivals, and I personally would recommend reading this before Divine Rivals if you want to know more about the world and have the world building built out a bit more. Like the world that they're living in, the different types of gods that are in this world, I think this book would actually be really good to read before Divine Rivals. But if you're reading more for romance and yearning and connection, then I would say to read Divine Rivals first and then come to this to actually understand the world building of Divine Rivals. That's a problem I have with the Letters of Enchantment duology, is that I felt like the characters and the relationship were so strong in that book, but the world building absolutely just lost me. I had no idea where we were. I knew it was like an historical fiction book with a magical element to it, but when it came to the actual like workings of the gods and why these gods are at war and all of that, I was simply like, I did not understand it at all. I could not imagine the world. I just felt like the world building was much more lackluster in the Letters of Enchantment duology compared to this. Like this book is very built out. Is it just feels very different. The writing is very different. I think the writing is definitely better in Wild Reverence, like by far. I don't know. I think maybe it's also because this is an adult fantasy and that's what it's marketed at, compared to Letters of Enchantment is marketed as YA fantasy and all of that. But I would say like the writing of this, it's very magical. The world building is, a lot easier to understand in this, and you understand how the gods work in this world, and the problems that these gods face, and sort of just how their worlds operate compared to what happens in the mortal realm and all that, and how they see mortals and all of that. Like this book is definitely like, the world building has been, you know been majorly improved upon by a lot, and it's almost like I'm reading like almost like a story from mythology, like Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology. It feels like there's like an overlying theme in this book that like by the end of it there's a lesson, like there's a moral or ethical like lesson that we are learning throughout this whole book, but at the same time I personally don't know. It just gives like Greek mythology vibes and all of that, which I personally really love. I love that type of world building, and I love it when authors put that much care in building this world and all of that. And so, yeah, like those are my initial thoughts going into Wild Reverence. I personally really enjoy it. I would say this is definitely a bit more character driven than it is plot driven. There's definitely still action and stakes that like keep you engaged while reading and all of that, but there is definitely a lot more yearning between the characters. It is a slower burn. I do wish we got a little bit more romance, but again, I'm only now entering Act 4, and Act 4 is very much a doozy. It is majority of the second half of this book, and I think Act 5 is maybe only like 3 or 4 chapters. And so, okay, maybe like a bit more, maybe like 9 chapters. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts on Wild Reverence so far. I personally am really enjoying it. I like it better than Divine Rivals. Those are my opinions so far, and I will probably give you an update when I probably finish this book. But yeah, those are my thoughts halfway through, or a bit more halfway through. So I just finished reading Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross last night. I thought I would come on here and do a quick book review of this. No spoilers, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to say before my review, so I think I'm just gonna get into it. Overall, I rated this a 4.5 stars, and I personally really enjoyed it, and I definitely enjoyed it a lot more than the Divine Rivals duology. But I think what made this lose some stars is just due to the fact that I had no idea where this book was going to go, and I thought it would be a bit more of a sadder book, in my opinion, if that makes sense. Overall, I still really enjoyed this, and I thought it was a very beautiful read. And I think what Rebecca Ross is so good at doing is it's writing that very, immersive imagery and making the environment like making you feel like you are living in that environment where with these characters. And so yeah, let's kind of dive a bit deeper into the book itself. First off, let me tell you the plot. Ask me what the plot was of this book. Like, if you ask me what the plot of this book is about, I would say the overall plot of this book is this story of this this immortal deity, god, goddess of heralds, messages, and all of that, falling in love with this mortal man and them trying to find their ways back to each other after situation upon situation. And it's almost in a way like it's fated to for them to be together. They're almost like fated soulmates in a way, but at the same time it's not really like called that in this book. And so I would say that's like the overarching plot as to where the plot goes and all of that. There's definitely themes of like war violence and all of that, but really this book is about this pantheon of gods that live in this world. So there are the underlings, which is like the underworld, and there are the gods of the underworld or that reside in the underworld, and then there's the skyward realm, which is very much like the gods of the sky, the heavens, that type of vibe. And then there's the mortal realm, and the mortal realm is where obviously mortals live. There aren't that many gods that live in the mortal realm, and there's also not that many mortals who become gods or anything like that. The way that the gods or this pantheon of gods works is that each god is sort of like the god of their own thing, like most mythology, like Greek mythology or Egyptian mythology. So there's like the god of the sky, the god of winter, the god of summer, the god of flowers, of whatever. And so each god's power is based off of how many stars they have in their own constellation. So the more stars they have, the more powers they have. And the way that they can become more powerful is if they kill each other. Once a god kills another god, they become the god of that specific, of the god that they killed. I personally really like the world building of the gods. I think that was definitely a lot stronger in this book compared to the Divine Rivals duology. The Divine Rivals duology is set more in the future and all of that, and it's during a time where there are two gods fighting, and pretty much the people that are most affected by these gods fighting are the people living in the mortal realm, literally fighting for their lives. Whereas in Wild Reverence, it's more so a story that tells you a lot more about the world of the gods and the power dynamics between each gods and their relationships with mortals and human beings and all of that. And so, yeah, I would say plot wise, there it is definitely a bit more character driven, but there's still enough to keep you engaged and to keep you seeing the thematic elements going on in this book. As for characters, this is dual point of view, and so you learn a lot more about the goddess Matilda, who is the god of heralds. She has the ability to travel in between the skyward realm and the underling realm, and that is due to her parents and all of that. As she goes on living her life ever since she was a kid, she learns that this mortal boy has been dreaming about her, and that's kind of what connects them at the beginning of everything. And so, yeah, the mortal in this book is Vincent, and he, hasn't had the best upbringing. He is the lord, or his father was like the lord of this place called Windrift, and then stuff happens to his family, and then he becomes lord. And so it's this role that he definitely doesn't want. He wants a more simpler life away from this, aspect of like royalty or, being a ruler of something. And so a lot of his characterization is definitely a bit more familial based, I would say. He has a very strong relationship with like his family and his brothers and all of that. And so when he meets Matilda, he realizes that she's a god. And so he really calls upon her to help him and, his struggles and the situation that he's in. And, at times she'll come to help him. At other times, Matilda's got her own thing going on. And so there's a lot of yearning and push and pull between these characters. And, I think the whole book is definitely a love story between them and, them being together. And so, yeah, as for like the fantasy elements, I really liked the world building. I thought it was way more well done in this book compared to Divine Rivals. I would definitely recommend that if you haven't read Divine Rivals, I would actually recommend reading this first. I think there's just a lot more to go off of from this book, and then going into Divine Rivals, you already get the world building and all of that, because I would say Divine Rivals is more so of like a love story between those two main characters, and the stuff around them that happens isn't as expanded upon as how it's expanded upon in this book. I read Divine Rivals first, and I just had like the opinion that the world building wasn't as great, and I feel like that's kind of why like the second book falls a bit short compared to, the first book and all that in that duology. Those are just my opinions. Those are my thoughts on Wild Reverence without there being any spoilers. Again, I gave it a 4.5. I think it would have been a 5 stars if it just had more fantasy elements. Honestly, I just thought it was going to be sadder than what was given to us. I was definitely expecting more of like a heartbreaking ending, and this one just never really made me get to that point where I felt very emotional reading it. I feel like with this one, I didn't connect to the characters that much. I definitely felt like I was just reading like a story from mythology, if that makes sense. Did it need to be 500 pages? That's debatable. I personally think that if it was cut a bit shorter, it would have been fine and all of that. But yeah, I think if you really like the Divine Rivals duology, though, you would probably like this book if you want to just jump back into Rebecca Ross's writing. She is a beautiful writer. There are so many quotes in here that I would say I connected to. I connected to the quotes more than the characters, if that makes sense. I connected to the writing a lot more than the actual characters themselves. And I think Rebecca Ross is so good at explaining, different things. And did I think that this book needed to be in first person? I personally don't think it needed to be. I also don't love first person books, especially in fantasy. I definitely like a more third person omniscient point of view, but that's personal opinion. Those are my thoughts on Wild Reverence, and let's move on to my next reads for this video. I'm back at the bookstore again because there are some books I want to pick up. It is Tuesday right now, and so a lot of new releases, so let's head into the bookstore. It's actually pretty empty right now. I think it's because it's like right after work, and I think a lot of people are trying to get home. Meanwhile, I literally went home, dropped off my stuff, and then came to the bookstore to grab all of the new releases I want. And so yeah, let's go in and see what's there. If you could witness the amount of restraint I had in that bookstore, crazy. Because, okay, I'm currently reading Fake Skating by Lynn Painter right now, and I was like debating whether or not to pick up the physical book because I've been listening audio and all that. And so here they have the Indigo exclusive, except I'm not the biggest fan of the Indigo exclusive cover. I don't like the red cover with the blue lettering. I like the blue color with the red lettering, which is the original cover. But yeah, they only have the Indigo exclusive one here, and it was in hardback. And so I don't love reading her books in hardback. I like the paperback better. The only one I have in hardback is Nothing Like the Movies. And so I picked up the hardcover and I walked around the store once with it, and then I just thought better of it. I was like, you know what, you might as well buy the book that you personally like better. And so I'm gonna wait for it to come out in paperback, which is going to be a year away, which is fine. It's fine. But yeah, I ended up picking up Alchemy of Secrets by Stephanie Garber, and then Mate by Ali Hazelwood, auto buy authors for me at this point. And then I ended up buying the Love and Lore pajama set because there are pink bows and it matches my bedding, and I think it's just the cutest thing. So yeah, I'm going to head on over home because Dancing with the Stars is on at 6 and it's currently 5:55 at this point, and I live 10 minutes away, so yeah, your girl's gotta hurry. So for my next reads of this video, I already got started on reading these last night. And the first one I have is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. And if you've watched my videos, you know that I love Ali Hazelwood's books. I will literally read anything she writes. And so Mate is the second book in the, not necessarily like a second book, it's like they're interconnected standalones, but it is the second book after the book Bride, and pretty much it takes place, I believe, after the events that happen in Bride. And so if you haven't read Bride, you have to read that in order to understand what happens in this book. The book Bride is a vampire and werewolf romance. This one is a werewolf and half human, half werewolf romance, I believe. And so, yeah, I did read the first few chapters and I'm already hooked. I'm already obsessed. I love the way she writes her characters and all that. And I think that these books are just so fun to pick up and read and just get into because literally nothing about these books are serious at all. And so, you can just tell Ali Hazelwood is having fun writing her little werewolf fiction and all of that, which honestly, period. And so she is also kind of my entrance into Omegaverse, but it's not deep into it. It's like dipping your toes into Omegaverse, but you're getting enough of it and it's not overbearing, if that makes sense. I definitely think this is going to be a fast read for me, but I'm excited to continue to pick up this series and get to know these new characters a bit better. The next book I also started to pick up reading is A Theory of Dreaming by Ava Reid. I read A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid and I really loved it. And so this is the sequel to that book. And look at these sprayed edges. So good. There's a lot of mixed reviews on this book, which I'm fine with. I don't mind a mixed review. I do also have the audiobook for this that may or may not influence how I rate this book and all of that, but for the most part, I read the first few chapters and it's in a very different setting than the first book. The first book, I guess, is in a way dark academia, but a lot of the book takes place outside of the school setting, and I think what makes that book so addicting to read is the environment that Ava Reid puts you in. She writes so beautifully, and she is really good at writing very gothic and, like feeling environments. Like when you read it, it truly feels like you're in like this dusty old house or like library, or like she really makes you feel like you're in the specific environment that she is writing about. And I think very few authors have that, ability to do that. And so that's why I'd love to pick up her book, is that like she really puts you in it, and you just feel the environment around you when you read. I believe A Theory of Dreaming takes place more in the university academic setting and all of that. I can't even explain the first book because I don't really remember what happens, but I know that this book takes place after the aftermath of the first book, so I might have to do a reread of the first book sometime when I have time and all of that. But yeah, that is A Theory of Dreaming, and I think I'm going to read them both at the same time. They're both very different from each other, and I think that's why it's so fun to read these books at the same time. These are the two books I am going to be reading next. It has been a hot minute since I last picked up the vlog camera, and so I thought I would come on here and tell you what I've been up to, what I've been reading. This past weekend has been kind of crazy, kind of insane. It is currently Wednesday, and the last time I picked up the camera was, I believe it was like Friday. So it's been definitely a few days. Some updates to give you. On Saturday, I ended up getting a tattoo. So new here's my new tattoo. There's no easy way for me to show it like right now. She is in her healing process right now, but on Saturday I kind of went on a citywide tour unintentionally. I just ended up having a lot of stuff happen, and one of the things that happened was I decided to go to the bookstore, and it is one of my favorite indie bookstores in town and all of that. And with this indie bookstore as well, I don't go as often as I should, but every time there's like a new release or something, they usually put it on the shelves a few days early. I think whenever they really just get the shipment, they put out the books. So while I was there, I ended up seeing an anticipated release that I have been wanting to pick up for so long, and that ended up being Girl Dinner by Olivia Blake, and I literally filmed myself finding the book and how shook I was. By the time this video is up and all that, like this will have already been released. I really like Olivia Blake. I love her writing and all that, and every book that I've picked up by her, which has only been like two, I've enjoyed and I really like. And so this one, I'm super excited to read it just because it is definitely a very different from what she normally writes. I believe this one takes place at like this sorority or something, and it's like there's this cult at this sorority. Anyways, that already got me hooked, and I think the design of this book is also stunning. I love the colors. And so, yeah, but that is sort of a nice little surprise I got this weekend. And then I just wanted to update you again on what I've been reading. So, yesterday I ended up finishing A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reid, and I also thought I would come on here and just give a quick review of this. And the reason why I didn't vlog myself reading this book in particular is mostly because I was listening to the audiobook while reading this, and it's just easier. And I also was reading this every time I like got home from work and all of that. And so this was definitely more of like one of my night reads. And overall, I gave this book a 3 stars. Compared to like A Study in Drowning, this book wasn't as great as the first book. My only really thoughts I have on this book in particular is I just didn't understand why it needed to be a sequel to A Study in Drowning, because I understand the topics, I understand the themes that Ava Reid wanted to talk about in this particular book, and I do think that, the topics that she discusses in this book are very relevant to our current society today, but it just to market this as a sequel to A Study in Drowning, I just feel like that was a bit weird to do so. And I get why she did it. I get it because, she didn't have to do a lot of world building on the side of that. Like, it just takes place in the exact same world and with the exact same characters that we see in A Study in Drowning. But the thing is, like, it just I don't think that it was as impactful as then if she were to create a different world for this book. And, I think what A Study in Drowning did so well was Ava Reid, she's a very strong writer. She, has this talent and this ability to really transport you into the environment that she's writing in. And a lot of the environment that she was writing in A Study in Drowning was very, gothic and, like atmospheric, a bit darker. And like you really felt that while reading it. Where in this one, she has that same writing ability to really bring you into the world, but the characters kind of just fell flat. And these characters also don't really interact with each other much in this book, which is a criticism I heard a lot going into it, and I can confirm that criticism. And it wasn't necessarily that they needed to interact in this book, but it was just like it's dual point of view, and they're very much on two different journeys and like quests from each other that they never really intersected with each other. It was sort of like one thing's happening to one character, another thing is happening to another character, and there's never really a part where these two plots intersect. It's sort of just like these things happen and then they wrap up in their own type of way. And I feel like she was just trying to bring a lot of elements into this book and a lot of themes and topics. But the thing is, there were so many things that, again, she didn't really know what to prioritize, and therefore everything else fell flat around that. I would say, like, Preston is definitely a more engaging character than Effie in this book, which is interesting. And there were a lot of things in this book that, now that I've had the time to think about it, I'm kind of just like, why was that decision made? Like it's one thing to make a decision, but if there's nothing to back up why you're choosing to write about a specific character, or really like a strong reason as to why a specific journey has is been being paid a bit more attention to the other one, I don't know, it was just very interesting to really think about. And I don't know, maybe if I do a reread of this, it might help or not. But the thing is also, it's like I truly don't remember a lot of what happens in A Study in Drowning, and that's kind of for better or for worse, if that makes sense. Like, it's a bit worse for me because I just simply, when it came to like what they were alluding to from the previous book, I simply could not remember those points. But that's a me problem because I have like a goldfish memory. But I think it was also a better reading experience for me because I didn't read the first book, because I couldn't like really compare to what was happening in the first book, that I kind of just read for the characters' journeys. And so yeah, it's like I understood a lot of the themes and the topics that Ava Reid wanted to explore in this book, but I think a lot of it fell flat, or it just felt very surface level. And I know that she has the capability to go beyond that, and to not see it be done well in this book is a bit disappointing. Overall, yeah, I gave this a 3 stars, and I think that this really shouldn't have been a sequel to A Study in Drowning. Like, I feel like it could have taken place in the same world and then explored, but having it be the same characters from A Study in Drowning, it just isn't as impactful as it could have been. if that makes sense. And so, yeah, but still, I didn't mind it. Again, there are things that I liked about it, there are things that I didn't like about it, and so that's why it's getting a 3 stars for me. It's just the things that I liked and didn't like were about the same, like, were pretty even for me. So, yeah, though that is my thought on A Theory in Dreaming by Ava Reid. Another book that I've been currently reading is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I'm almost done this. I think I only have about 30% left of this book, and overall, I think this might be one of my favorite Ali Hazelwood books, and that's saying a lot because and I don't know, there's just something hitting about like her most recent releases to me that I don't know, something scratching my brain because I literally said this about Problematic Summer Romance, and now it's me. Like these two books, for some reasons, are scratching my brain. I am really enjoying them for some reason, and yeah, it just there's so much action, there's so much yearning. There, like this, the romance in this is definitely more of a slow burn, but it's been hitting. Like everything about this book has been hitting. I'm really, really enjoying this one. And I don't know, just like the male main character, the female main character, I like their banter. I like their relationship. I don't think that this book is going to be for everyone. I think there are definitely going to be people that like Bride a bit better, but I like Mate a lot more than Bride. I don't know. I feel like with Bride, it took me a while to get into that book. Meanwhile, with this one, I was already like hooked from like the second page. And so, yeah, I'm going to continue reading Mate. And I guess there's a quota that I need to hit for each video that I make, in that I need to read at least one werewolf romance per, or one werewolf themed book per video. I don't know why I set that quota, but here we are. And yeah, I'm going to continue reading Mate by Ali Hazelwood, but I just wanted to give you guys those updates as to what I'm reading. And yeah, so definitely a lot more romantasy books happening, but we're just gonna continue the theme of these fun little romance fantasy books. I wanted to give a quick update as to what I've been reading. The other day, I just finished reading Mate by Ali Hazelwood, so I thought right now when I have time would be the perfect time to do a quick book review of this, and so let's just get straight into it. Overall, I gave this a 4.75 stars. I believe it didn't hit the 5-star mark for me, but I did really enjoy this. I think Problematic Summer Romance is still my favorite Ali Hazelwood book, but this comes as like a close second. I just really enjoyed it, and I think I just have a bias as to werewolf romances. So pretty much for this one, it is a part of the it's like an interconnected standalone of like I don't know if she has like an actual like series name for this, but this is the second book that comes after the book Bride. So Bride is a vampire werewolf marriage of convenience romance kind of book. Meanwhile, this one is a half werewolf romance book, and it is from the point of view of the character from Bride, Misery. It's her best friend, Serena. It takes place in her point of view. Serena plays a pretty big role in Bride, and so you definitely do have to read Bride in order to read this if you want to understand their relationship a bit better and the stuff that happens to Serena before this book. You don't have to read Bride, but I would highly recommend you read Bride. Otherwise, everything from that book is going to get spoiled to you in this one. But this one is about Serena, Misery's best friend, and pretty much it's her book, and she is mated to this alpha of like the Northwest Pact named Cohen. And pretty much Serena, her life is kind of in danger, and so that's why she has to kind of be with Cohen and protected by Cohen. So it's sort of like this a forced proximity type romance in the woods with an alpha pack. It's very, very fun, I would say. And I didn't have any like high expectations going into this. Like I liked Bride when I read it, but I didn't love it. It's not one of my favorite Ali Hazelwood books. But reading Mate, I don't know, there was something about this one that I just felt like it engaged me the entire time. I really liked the plot, and I loved the relationship between the two characters because they're two people who are they know themselves very well. And so their personalities, you would say, don't really seem like they would go together, but the banter in this book was so fun. I really like the banter. I really like the yearning and the relationship between the two characters in this book. I thought it was really well done. It was very fast paced, and the werewolf politics that happen and like the twist and all that. In this one, you see them coming a bit more than in Bride, but overall, I had a really fun time with it. I love the yearning. I just loved that at the start of each chapter, this was like the same with Bride, but at the start of each chapter, you get to read the thoughts of the male point of view, and so how like the male character Cohen is perceiving Serena in each chapter and all of that. And so I really like that. I think Cohen is one of my favorite male characters in the Ali Hazelwood universe of men, which um, is definitely sometimes like the same man but in a different font, but it's okay. It's okay because it's Ali Hazelwood and I will read literally anything written by her. And I think with Ali Hazelwood as well, with these books, these are really fun, but you also get to see that like that side of Ali Hazelwood where you know she's super smart. You know that she's going to be using big words in this book because there were so many words in this book that I truly was coming across and I was like, I have no idea what this means, but I feel smarter reading this, even though the content of this book is just very like werewolf romance coded. It is a bit freaky. There's a lot of spice and some freaky moments. Not necessarily reach the Omegaverse type of like werewolf coded romance, but you know, enough that there's still a lot of like references to wolves and all that. Like it's a very good start to learning about what happens in like Omegaverse romances, but it's not that much where it's like it gets super weird and sexual and like awkward to read about. I would say it's done very well, and you know, it brings that kind of like cringe but in a good way. Like there's bad cringe and there's good cringe, and this is good cringe, if that makes sense. That probably did not help anyone. That is my review of Mate by Ali Hazelwood. I would say I like the female character. I like the main male character. I like the action that happens. I like the relationship between them. And so there were some things that I didn't like. I think there could have been a lot more like character development and all of that, because I feel like with Serena as a character, sometimes like you really have to understand her. Like if you don't take the time to understand her motivations, I feel like you wouldn't like Serena as much as a main character. But like she's a very complicated character, and I do wish we got to spend a bit more time with Cohen, because I feel like he wasn't as fully developed as he could have been, but she would probably have to make this dual point of view if that were to happen, and this was only through the point of view of Serena. So, yeah. But overall, again, I really enjoyed this. I'm a sucker for werewolf romances, and if it's a werewolf romance well done, I'm gonna enjoy it. And so, yeah, that is Mate by Ali Hazelwood. Hey friends, so originally I was going to read one more book for this video, but I started editing this video, and as I was editing this video, I realized that I read and got a lot more content than I thought I did. So we are going to end this video here, and I'm going to get started on my next one for next week. But thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any similar thoughts on the books that were read for this video, please let me know in the comments below. I've been having a lot of chaotic weeks just because of work and all of that, and just personal things outside of work. And so I really have been trying to get as much content as I can. But as you see in the next few weeks, we're going to try to continue this momentum of reading all of these fantasy books and all that are on my TBR, but at the same time, the content is going to ebb and flow. So yeah, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one.